Welcome to Rolleeball Part 3. We're going to add a pickup. Let's go ahead and get started in here. So, let's go ahead and move this wall over a little bit more. So, for right now, instead of importing any artwork, we'll just create a placeholder. So what we can do is I'm going to create an empty here and we'll call this pickup. And I'm going to go ahead and reset the transforms, always a good habit. And this pickup is just going to be our parent object. So underneath that, we're going to right-click on our pickup in the hierarchy. We're going to do a 3D cube. We just press F to zoom in. And let's go ahead and rotate this, let's say -40. And -20, and we'll put this at, for now, 0.5, 0.5, and 0.5. Whoops, -0.5. There we go. Let's rename this cube 1, and we've got a weird, you can't quite see, we're going to move the player out, and this is just gray, a little boring, so let's go ahead and go to our materials folder, and we could make it shiny, so we can take our material player, duplicate that, Control D, and duplicate, we're going to name, we just name it pickup for now, and we'll click that and come over and change the color, do like a nice orange, drag that onto our cube, and then we could click 2D mode. And I'm going to go ahead and do Control D to duplicate it. I'm just going to move it down. And I'm going to change the scale to 0.3, 0.3, and 0.3. And let's get out of 2D. What we need to do is just kind of move this on the blue axis over. Oh, we're just trying to get it centered there. There we go. Move it up, back over a little bit. There we go. That looks good. Probably help if instead of our global pivot, we use the local pivot, which would allow us to kind of move it. So I'm going to put this, I'm going to put one on the bottom. We'll do Control D, and also put one on the top. Go. Control D again. So you could just make this unique shape however you'd like to do that for now. This is just to get something a little bit more interesting for our pickup object. There we go. you can turn your lights on and off. Looks kind of cool with the lights on. So now we have our pickup here. And we're going to create a script here for rotating it, but also with the potential to have some changes later on to maybe do some other fancy stuff. So let's go ahead and go to our scripts folder, right click, and we'll create a C# script. We could call this Rotator. And we'll select our pickup. And I'm going to have our main object rotate. So what we'll do is just put our rotator script right on the pickup object. And I'm going to wait till we set all of our variables before we make a prefab of this. Go ahead and double click our rotator script. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the start method. We don't need that. Void update is going to be running every frame, right, depending on how many frames. But we're going to make a few changes. Let's see, inside of update. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to rotate the game object that this script is attached to. We want to use per second instead of per frame. So we'll use time.delta time for that. So what that looks like is this, we don't have to get component because this rotator script is right on the pickup and it has a transform, so we can shorthand it just by saying transform dot rotate, and this is going to get the angles here and degrees and rotate it. So get that. Then inside our parentheses, we have to actually put the vector 3, and we're going to specifically assign vector 3s. So we're going to have to say new vector 3, and then in parentheses, we'll put our rotation for the X, rotation for the Y, rotation for the Z, and then outside of those parentheses, we want to times it by time dot delta time. And that's going to make it per second. There we go. Now it's giving us an error because it sees X and Y and Z as a variable because you can't actually put that there. So we're going to say, we'll delete this X and we'll say rotate X, rotate Y, and rotate Z. And then above our update, we're going to put those variables in. So this variable is going to be an integer, a whole number, and it's called rotate X. And right now we're not going to assign anything, but we do want to be able to see this in the inspector to change it for each object that we would want to rotate, which the rotation might be different depending on the object. So we're going to go ahead and put our curly braces, or I'm sorry, our brackets, and we'll do serialize field so we can see it in the inspector. I'm just going to copy this line, paste it here, This needs to be rotate Y. So you can also double click it and you'll see, hey, rotate Y is down here as well. Do the same thing again, but it'll be rotate Z. There we go. Now we have our variables that we could put different values in for each object that we might put the script on, and that will control it rotating per second. We'll go ahead and save this. Go back to our pickup. Now you can see our rotate X and our rotate Y. We're not going to see anything yet, but if we click play, you could see, okay, rotate X is going to do that, rotate Y is going to do that, and rotate Z would rotate on the Z. So our pivot is a little wonky because of where our object is, so we could move our object to kind of fix that. We'll turn off play. So you can see our origin of the world is where our pivot is for the parent object. So we got to select our cubes, and let's do global because we just want to move this down. And I'm going to select my parent to kind of see. This is where I might reset my transforms for all of these and then replace them since I didn't do that right the first time. So that's a lot closer. So now if we do rotate Y or rotate Z, it's a little bit off, but you get the idea. So rotate Y, and you could do negative to go the opposite direction. So maybe I want to do 180. It's a little fast. Maybe we'll just do 90. That's kind of nice. So when we turn off play, it disappears. We'll go ahead and set that to 90 for this object. And we can move it up. Click play again to see it in action. And there we go. So now our pickup is almost ready. We do want to create a tag for this. So when we write a script to be able to pick this up, we could be able to grab the tag to identify it. So we don't have a tag for it, so we first have to add the tag to our tag list. So here's our tags. List is empty. We'll click the plus sign, and we'll name this pickup. And you got to pay attention to the name because in code this is going to have to be exactly the same. So capital P, capital U, and we will save that. So there's our, and I accidentally did both these capitals. That's okay. You can do it the same way. All right, so now select the pickup parent, and now that we've created the tag, let's assign it. So we'll click the drop down and select pickup. Now, we also want to make sure that we can grab this pickup. So we're going to add component, and you can look at our colliders. We can just type in collider, and let's grab, we'll do a sphere collider for this. And you can see it's based on the pivot point of our parent. So we could go back to selecting our cubes. I'm going to move them down just a little bit more. There we go. So they're about centered now. So now we have this sphere collider. So when the player hits the collider, it'll collide with it. What we want it to do is not just collide. We want it to trigger something in our code. So we're going to do is trigger. So we'll turn that on. and we're going to use that in our code. So for now, we're going to go ahead and set this up in our player controller script. So we'll double click the player controller script. I'm going to hide the enforce max speed and the move player. And we could do this underneath this. So we're going to do void. And Unity already has a method called OnTriggerEnter. So if we select that or tab over, it automatically sets that up for us. I'm going to go ahead and delete private to clean this up. So it says OnTriggerEnter. It's going to look at the collider of the object, calling it other. And we want to first determine if that other object is the pickup, then we want to do something like add points. So I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, we say other dot, let's start with if. If what? If other dot game object dot compare tag, and then in parentheses, in quotations, what's the name of the tag? We'll say pick up. So if it's tagged pickup, then what do we want to do? Well, the first thing is we want this to disappear. So for now, what we can do is we can say, okay, take this other game object, and what we want to do is use the method setActive, which is going to get this box here, and it will deactivate it, essentially turning off everything below it. So here we will say setActive, and now we want it to be false. So that will turn it off. Now we want to be able to get points for this object. So first we're going to have to determine the points. So again, up here, what we can do is we can leave it private, and we'll just create an integer for points. And once we get the points, we're going to want to be able to see how many points we have on our screen. So to do that, we're also going to need text from Unity, and we'll name this text, and it's not going to let us do it at the moment because the text comes from Unity's UI system. So up above at the very top, we're going to have to put in a namespace for using Unity Engine .ui, and then semicolon. That will get the UI content that we need. So now you notice the text is now in green. So now I can say text, what is this variable? This is going to be our display points. And let's go ahead and we will serialize our points and serialize our text. So this variable right now is not going to display anything until we assign the UI. Where do we display this? But now we have points. So when we start the game, we're going to start off the points with 0. And then we'll go back to our OnTriggerEnter here. And we're going to want to add points for that. So we'll say points equals. Now, we don't want to assign a number, we want to add, so we would have to say points plus 1, if we spell it correctly. Alright, so this would be fine. So let's say maybe we also want to have a specific value. Maybe we want to have an object that is a pickup that maybe gives a certain amount of points. In that case, we would want to set how many points it gives. For right now, we can just keep it simple, though, and we'll come back to that. So every time we collide, we hit this trigger for an object that's tagged pickup. It will deactivate the pickup object, and it will take our points, and it'll add 1. Now, if we're only adding 1, another way that you can do this is just simply say points plus equals 1. So that is going to take your points and add 1. So then, say if we have 15 points, right, it's just going to add 1 when we trigger another pickup. So then it'll go 15, 16, 17, and so on. We have that. So in the next, as we continue, we're going to set up the display for displaying the points when we get those. If we wanted to check that this is working, we could do a debug.log, and then in parentheses, we could do points, because we want to display the points, and then plus, we're going to put some text information here. So in quotations, we'll say total points so far. In that with a semicolon. Save this. And we can click play. And then we bump into it. Whoa. I can look at my console. And as long as you don't have it hidden with this info bubble here, we can see 1 total points so far. So it puts that 1 in there, and we're good to go. So if we duplicated the pickup a few times, we would get 2 total points so far, 3 total points so far showing up in here. We just turn off play. And so far, our pickup is good to go. We want to go ahead and grab our pickup. Let's make this a prefab. So we'll just drag this down to our prefabs folder, and we have a pickup. Now this current one we could leave in our scene for now, maybe even duplicate it a couple times so we have something there. There we go. So let's save our scene, Control S. And now let's get into displaying our points or score.